Hello and thanks for visiting SecurityCamerasandMore.com. In this video we'll be talking about how to build your own security camera system. We talk to people all the time who are trying to build their own security camera system and just don't know how to get started and have some very basic questions. Hopefully this video will answer some of those questions and get you pointed in the right direction. When starting to put together your security camera system, we suggest that you select your components in this order. First, your DVR, then your cameras, your cables and connectors, your power supply, and then your monitor. So the first component of the system that you'll want to figure out is the DVR. And the most important question with the DVR is how many cameras you're going to need or possibly need in the future. Remember, DVRs come in 4, 8, 16, and even 32 channels. So if you think you need like 11 cameras, don't look for an 11-channel DVR. You're just going to have to get a 16-channel DVR. And if you think you need 4 cameras now but might add a couple in the future, go and get the 8-channel DVR now. It'll save you a lot of headaches down the road. The next thing you're going to want to think about is the storage size or the hard drive size of the DVR. Remember, more cameras equals more storage needed. So there are certain settings in your DVR that you can change to minimize the amount of hard drive space being used. And you can always set the DVR to record over the oldest footage if the hard drive fills up. But it's probably best to err on the side of getting a little more hard drive space than you need, because hard drive space is not all that expensive. The next thing you're going to want to figure out are the frames per second of the DVR. Now 30 frames per second is live motion. It's like watching a movie. So if you want to be able to record a live motion with all of your cameras at the same time, you're going to need to get a DVR with the frames per second of, take your number of cameras and multiply it times 30. So a 4-camera system, you'd want a DVR with 120 FPSs. Then you might want to consider other features like web and 3G phone accessible, maybe check the warranty. There are a lot of features that we're not going to cover in this video. The other thing that you might want to consider is a DVR lockbox. You might capture some great footage of someone breaking into your property and stealing things, but one of the things they might steal is your DVR if it's not secure. So consider a DVR lockbox so they can't walk off with it. So now that you've selected a DVR, it's time to start thinking about what type of cameras you're going to need. The first question you're going to want to ask yourself is how many indoor cameras I'll need and how many outdoor cameras. Remember, outdoor cameras have a heavy-duty, weatherproof housing on them that protect them from hot and cold temperatures and direct sunlight and rain. And you pay a little bit more for that. So you don't want to buy outdoor cameras if you're only going to be using them for indoor use. And the same is true for resolution. You have to ask yourself, do I really need to get that very highest resolution? And if you don't need it, then you don't need to pay for it. Don't pay for features you're not going to use. And then you're going to want to ask yourself how much night vision you're going to need. And night vision is usually quoted in terms of the number of IR infrared LEDs on the camera. Not all cameras have night vision, and don't pay for cameras that can see 300 feet if you only need to see 20 feet. And the more IR LEDs you have, the further it can see, is the general rule of thumb. The next point is something that a lot of people get hung up on, and this is the optimal focal length of each camera. And this is usually expressed in the specs that you'll see like a number like 2.8 mm or 3.6 mm is very common, 6 mm, and those are the millimeters. And the general rule of thumb here is the lower that number is, the wider the angle of view, but the shorter the optimal focal distance. So a 3.6 mm focal length is going to give you a fairly wide angle of view, but your optimal focal distance is going to be maybe somewhere between 20 to 30 feet. So if you're trying to monitor the back of a parking lot, a 3.6 millimeter focal length is not going to give you the type of clarity that you need. You may have to go to a 6 millimeter or even a 10 millimeter camera. And there are varifocal lenses that allow you to manually adjust the optimal focal distance to meet your needs. You may want to consider other features of the camera, such as vandal-proof housings, and always look at the warranty. There are many other things we're not going to cover in this video. There are also a number of specialized cameras, like license plate capture cameras and pan-tilt zoom cameras. And again, you may need these. They are available, but don't pay for things that you're not going to need. So now you have your DVR and your cameras picked out, you can start to think about what type of cables you're going to use. And the first thing you're going to want to do is calculate the total length of cable that you're going to need for your project. And the way you do this is measure the distance from each camera to the DVR. And this includes going up and down walls or over objects, not just from point A to point B. And once you've done that, then you can try to figure out if you can use pre-made cable or bulk cable. And pre-made cable comes in fixed lengths, such as 70 or 100 feet, and the connectors are already attached, but they're fixed length. So let's just say you need only 50 feet of cable. Well, you're going to, with a 70-foot pre-made cable, you're going to have 20 extra feet that you're going to have to wind up and tuck away somewhere. It's not a big deal, but something you want to think about. Now, bulk cable comes in on a spool, and you can cut this to the exact length you need, but you have to attach the connectors, and some people just don't want to fuss with that. The type of cable that is used in most security camera applications is RG59, and this type of cable carries the video and the power. It's also commonly called Siamese cable. So once you have your cabling figured out, you can start to select your power supply. Remember, the power will be managed back near the DVR if you're using Siamese cabling, so you won't have to supply power to the cameras where they're installed. If you're using bulk cabling, you'll need to install a power lead for each camera. It's not very difficult to do. It's just something that people overlook when they're putting together their bill of materials. And we suggest, if you're using up to 4 cameras, to use a pigtail. And this is just a device where the power supply for up to 4 cameras plugs into this, and then out of that comes one plug that you put into an outlet. And we also suggest, if you're using more than 4 cameras, to use a central power supply cabinet. And this is just a cabinet where you can plug in, depending on which model, up to 9 or 18 cameras, and then that just plugs into an outlet. And you may also want to consider an uninterruptible power supply, and this is just a device that will keep your system powered up in case you lose power. So once you have your power supply figured out, it's time to start thinking about what type of monitor you're going to need. Now remember, most DVRs are web accessible, so a separate monitor may not be necessary. Think about it. If you can just pull up a web browser on your computer and log into your DVR, that computer's monitor can act as the DVR and the security system's monitor. It doesn't have to be on the other side of the world. It can be, that computer can be right next to the DVR. But let's just say you need a monitor. If your system has up to 4 cameras, a 15 or 17-inch monitor should be fine. If you have 5 or more cameras, you probably want to look at a 19-inch or greater monitor. And remember, there is a difference between a monitor and a television. A monitor is typically used with a computer, and it uses a VGA format along with VGA connectors. A television uses RCA connectors. So we hope this video was helpful and answered some of your basic questions and gets you pointed in the right direction. If you're ready to start building your security camera system today, go on to www.securitycamerasandmore.com, and also look for part 2 of this series, which is finding the components for your system, on our website.